All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll kick this thing off. I got a couple topics to discuss this week. We'll just dive straight into it and hopefully pick up some audience members as we go. I think the big influx hasn't quite come yet. Let's start with the full licenses. So as we discussed this a bit last week, we let you guys know that we're getting pretty close to launching that. So we have some test images set up for those full license images. So kind of a reminder, these licenses give you the ability to get as close to the full Examiner experience as you can, but on your own hardware. The first way that we're going to deliver this is on a full Linux image. So this will be a Linux image or a Linux operating system computer that you have running yourself. And then we will deliver this as a executable or like a program on top of that. There is another way in the future that you'll be able to run it, which will be on a Windows computer, but it won't be native. So we're kind of calling this the Linux native version. Putting a call out there for probably two people that have Linux boxes ready or are pretty comfortable setting up a Linux machine. If you have a full license and you're looking forward to that coming out and you have the ability to be one of the first people running on that, then put your name in the hat, leave us something in the events channel, and we'll be able to include you in that process. This will be hopefully a version that makes it to like final release. Like we're feeling pretty good about it. It's worked beautifully on all of our internal tests, but just before we completely open it up to the world, we feel it's wise at this point anyway, and this is based on some past learning, that it's always best to, no matter how confident you are in it, just give it to a couple people first and see what happens. Because even if it does work and everything, you might still learn that maybe the wording in some of the menus needs to be tweaked, that kind of thing. Things that make sense to you, but just some feedback that can be incorporated pretty easily. So putting that call out now, that if you have a Linux machine or the ability to set up a Linux machine and you're comfortable doing that, and you have your full license ready to go, then leave us a message and you might wind up being one of the first people to get your full license up and running. It's pretty exciting. Also an update to something that we've discussed over the last couple of weeks. So our central contractor, over the last month or month and a half or so, we've been kind of ongoing remedying and focusing in on some issues that have been occurring for, well, we've learned are kind of a variety of reasons. Some of them are kind of in our control and were actually issues with the contractor itself, or a lot of them were just really kind of edge cases, weird conditions that things could get in, and sometimes an unexpected state could be reached. But some of them were some other things, but we've really spent a lot of effort over the last couple of weeks honing in on exactly what's been going on there. And we're feeling really good about the state there. So a lot of those kind of edge cases are being worked out, or already have been, and are in the process or have already been updated. So shouldn't be nearly as many impacted things anymore. And in fact, I'm seeing that anecdotally, that I think there's way fewer cases of those data drops, which was typically how they would look from the provider side. But we're working through some of the last couple tricky issues. In fact, I think I saw the phrase killing three birds with one stone thrown around in one of the internal channels as a clever trick that'll get rid of some of these last couple of issues that we're seeing. But yeah, we've got a good handle on this. We've really matured our process and our tools to be able to track and detect these issues. So if you're one of those people that have showed up in the Discord and been willing to share your Grafana and been willing to share your logs with us, that has been very helpful. One of the biggest gifts to a development team is to have a really active and intelligent and good willing community. And I think that's something that we've really been blessed with, and give a big thank you to all of you guys that have been contributing to that and helping close the feedback loop in terms of when there's been an issue, helping us identify what has happened, provide some logs, and kind of work with us on that. So that's really something that I think is mutually beneficial. It's good for you guys to because I know some of you are kind of interested in some of our development processes and you really want the best for the project. And it's awesome for us to not only see that, but be able to bring in some people into that process and help get some of these issues solved a lot quicker than they might otherwise be. So moving on to more kind of the business side. So this is more Exanet services oriented. I think we've alluded in a couple calls previously that we have some partners. So we have some storage partners that are more, well, I think we have a couple different partner categories going on, but the ones that I'm talking about today are people that are interested in using Exanet services and are using the data on our network. So there will always kind of be an open call out to the community and out to any of the people that we can reach that we are happy to take your data. We are feeling really good about this platform that we've built, feeling good about its performance and its ability to do everything that we've hoped it could. So we'll just kind of always reiterate that there is an open call to if you have the ability to switch over some of your existing cloud use cases to our network, then definitely reach out to us and we'd be really happy to help make that happen and maybe fill you in on some information that you might be curious about. And also, another way that could look is instead of maybe outright replacing some of the cloud uses that you have, it could be using some of them in parallel. So this is the classic kind of A/B test. If you see this new platform that you're interested in and you're not quite sure if it can replace your existing workflows, maybe run it in parallel with your existing one for a little bit, see how it performs. I mean, that'll be a pretty good way to tell outright if it does everything that we say it can do or not. And really, there's low stakes at this point because we are pretty happy to work with you guys to help make it as affordable and easy as possible to get started on our network. So internally, we have some kind of one-on-one sessions with some of our partners. So this will be assistance for not just guidance on how to set up on our platform and get started, because that's something that at this stage is pretty important because there isn't a super well-defined, there one day will be, but right now there isn't a super well-defined example and use case of, okay, like what does a typical setup look like? What are like the different hardware pieces that I'll need? So these are all things that we can advise on now, but we acknowledge that there isn't a wealth of resources out there for you to look at already. So that's why we're happy to work with people one-on-one to help advise and guide and make sure that you get up and started with some kind of custom consulting. And we're also very happy to help out on the economic side as well to make it really worth your while and make sure that everybody's coming out of this as a winner, because we want data. People who are using cloud services need to store data, and we are very confident that there's a way out of this that everybody wins. So just kind of putting that out there as an open call, and just letting you guys know that those calls are happening privately, those one-on-one consultations. Moving on, some Examiner updates. So we discussed last week that the UI 1.1 came out. That's pretty exciting. Some of you also may have noticed if you looked at Grafana today that it looks a little different, which is always good. I mean, Grafana as a tool can be a little finicky to work with, but I think when it looks good, it can look really good and work well. So we're consistently iterating on our interfaces and our menus and presentations. So Grafana got a bit of a makeover today. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to. I think it looks a lot simpler and more straightforward, and all the information there is what you would expect to see, and you don't have to scroll way down the page to see some other things. So I hope you guys enjoy that as well. And if you are interested in getting an Examiner, which I think if you're not right now, once that data really starts filling up on drives, I think you will be. Those are now available to ship within a week at this point. So I think as we've acknowledged before, it can be a little difficult to promise like immediate shipping, like same day shipping, because that's just realistically with how real world supply chains and logistics works. Unless you're at like Amazon scale of distributing, that can be really challenging. But within a week is what we're saying at this point that we're pretty confident we can hit. So you can get an Examiner to your door by next week if you'd like, and that's pretty awesome because there was a time not too long ago where the timeline was looking a little longer. So pretty exciting to be able to deliver those pretty quickly now. The last thing that I want to touch on, because I did run through these topics a little quickly, but this will be a bit more of an open-ended discussion, and I'll circle back to some things. There was a user in our Discord earlier this week that shared in a channel a video that I think was kind of interesting to a lot of people. And this video discussed some of the privacy and security concerns around Discord itself as a platform. And I think this is kind of a story that we've seen play out many times in the tech world with some big names like Facebook is probably the poster child, but some other networks that all seem to kind of have issues and consistent concerns around the privacy and the security of data on that platform. So Discord being a huge platform now, I think it's in the hundreds of millions of users, and people use it for all sorts of things from potentially, its original use case of coordinating people playing games together to now, I mean, there's a whole company, our company, that kind of runs off of Discord. And we use the internal channels for all sorts of different things, coordinating things, sharing goals and planning. So it's really kind of grown as a platform and the kinds of things people use it for. And that has created some challenges for and some kind of open questions for how is the data handled in the back end, who has access to that data. And this video that was shared supposes that there's enough reason to suspect that a lot of the user data and when I say user data, I'm not necessarily meaning data on you as a user. So the high res version of your profile picture is maybe one thing, but really the meat of it seems to be the content of private channels and private servers and chats. That all of that is unencrypted, which is a little scary. So that is just sitting on a hard drive in a data center somewhere in the world. And also who has visibility into it. So Discord has a number of different investment firms. Some of those investment firms are big tech companies. And this video kind of supposed that there was some data sharing going on where Discord was sending data back to Chinese tech companies that might have direct access to the content of a lot of user interactions and messaging and stuff. So that's a little concerning, particularly for us as a team that uses Discord every day to coordinate our plans and our discussions and these kinds of things. I mean, you would hope that that kind of thing would be private to the point where you'd never really have to worry about that falling into the hands of a competitor, but that's not the world that we live in. And I think this is another kind of classic example. I mean, not that you have to look too far, of the importance of kind of native encryption on a platform and being in control of your own data. These are some philosophies that we bring to our product, that end-to-end encryption and control over your data, self-determinism, that these are all not just concepts that are kind of nice on paper because some cryptographers in the 2000s figured out a way to kind of make money work on it or whatever. But these are things that actually have direct real-world impacts. And there would be some real-world fallout if a competitor were able to kind of covertly see your plans and some of your infrastructure design, some things like that. There are, that's a real attack vector. And you're able to sleep a little bit less well at night knowing that, the odds aren't zero that could happen. It's just concerning, especially if you're already kind of having to fight uphill as a company trying to make its space in the world. Then it's yeah, it's just challenging, and I don't think that that's a concern that's specific to our company. I think every company out there would sleep better at night knowing that it's all of its data were encrypted on the drives that it's ultimately stored on. So that's kind of considered data at rest, that no one is able to access it there, and also that the access to that data is within your control fully. So this is what the Relayer product gives. This is what we've been building. You're in full control over the access to that data through the cloud. That's infrastructure that you own, you control. It's not on someone else's server. You're not outsourcing that pretty important step. These are all kind of pretty important privacy and security concepts that we're happy to bring to the world. And I really hope one day be able to deliver to all sorts of different platforms. So right now that is just object storage, but I think it's not too far-fetched that those technologies and abilities exist to stretch that to all sorts of different areas as well. And I think that would be a really awesome direction to take things. But that would require a larger team and more time, and we would love to do it, really would. But right now it's first things first, object storage, because that's in a sense what a lot of things kind of ultimately boil down to. I mean, Discord as an application, when you think about it, there's a lot going on, particularly with if you involve the voice calls and everything. But in its back end, when you think about the chats and the time, the metadata, so the time that messages were sent at, who sent them, all that sort of thing. When you think about at a low level what's going on there, it is object data stored on a hard drive somewhere, and that's ultimately what a lot of things kind of boil down to. So that's why we're tackling that first, but it's not too far-fetched that the ability would be out there to kind of program whole applications to use the SC Prime network and Exanet services platform to host these kinds of applications without a lot of these challenges and concerns around security and privacy. So I think it's pretty important work that we're doing. I think it's awesome that all of you guys are able to be involved in it, and well, not just involved, but actually make money from it. Obviously, passive income is a pretty big appeal. So it's awesome that we're able to kind of marry this really important pieces of technology and this product that we're delivering to also something that kind of win-win for everybody involved, because that's something that we feel pretty strongly is a key to keeping people around, and the incentive system in order to have things be kind of stable long term. Ultimately, you need to build it fundamentally sound and not stretch some truths or anything like that. I thought about throwing some shade to the Helium network, but ultimately, to be honest, I don't even follow Helium enough to really be able to do that. But I think they're an interesting model anyway, and I think they are doing some neat things when it comes to delivering some kind of cutting edge technology in a way that rewards everyday people. So if there's any questions, this would be a good time to put your hand up. I can review my notes to see if there's any more topics I wanted to touch on. Hey, Nate Dogg, what's up?
Hey, thanks for having me. Just I was poking around earlier on the map of all the different providers. I just got kind of curious, clicking on I found some interesting numbers that say 25% of the providers work for X amount of, 50% of the available storage. But I was looking at the prices that people have listed as kind of their price per terabyte, and of course the range was anywhere from around $4.10 per terabyte, which mostly those were examiners, but a lot of them were like 26 cents and 52 cents, and kind of the range, really. Now, I know in the past it was discussed that there's kind of a suggested price, because we don't want this to be a race to the bottom, right? Who can provide the cheapest storage? So I was wondering kind of what effect what would happen to those providers that, I'm assuming most of those are DIY and they just haven't updated their settings, but what kind of consequences there are for someone that's kind of outside of that suggested price range? And then when would that actually start to take effect so that we kind of get everybody on the same page as far as cost per terabyte?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, and it's something that I've actually been thinking a lot about lately. So, to give a bit of backstory and some kind of context around pricing and what happens during periods of volatility. So, the network that ours kind of derived from, uh, so we can't trace a lineage back to another distributed storage network before us. They worked a little differently. Their philosophies were a little different, but a lot of the mechanics were the same or very similar anyway. And one of the things that we saw over there is that their coin did experience a period of pretty significant appreciation in a short period of time, and then kind of a long decline afterward. And we were able to kind of look and analyze that situation. And as we were building our network out for the first time, we were able to learn some lessons from that. So one of the things that we observed was that a lot of people, even people, on the DIY side, well, their network only had DIYs, but there was only a very small amount of providers on their network that regularly updated the pricing. Most were content to just kind of set the pricing when you set the provider up, and then every once in a while, maybe update it. But it really wasn't the constantly moving storage marketplace that everyone kind of assumed it would be. So that was why we put so much focus on these kind of on creating incentives in the first place. So our incentives program is kind of designed from the ground up to reward, to set certain clear expectations that we want providers to hit and to keep, because we feel that they're things that are best for the health of the network. And we wanted to make sure that the people who followed those things that we liked were making the most money. So that was the purpose, and that was the kind of philosophy behind the incentives program. So it's just straight up, if you're doing something we like, we will pay you more, and we'll make sure that you are earning more than if you're doing something that maybe we didn't like. So one of those things then from the incentives program did involve pricing and making sure that the pricing was within a certain range. So while we were still kind of developing and maturing our ability to have the price track a certain dollar value, for a while we just asked a certain SEP range. So every month or every couple of months, there might be an update to say like, okay, if your pricing is anywhere from 1 to 15 SEP per terabyte per month, then that's in our incentives range, and people would update that. And it kind of worked that way. But now, like I said, we are maturing that ability to really track and kind of peg to a dollar value. So it is about $4 per terabyte per month that we are targeting, and we've been as loud and clear about that as possible. But obviously, over the past 6 months or so, the coin price has been a little volatile. So potentially there's people that would have set back in the winter or early in the year, they would have set in that range of 1 to 15 at the time and just haven't really changed it since. So that might be why now there's some in like the 25-cent range or something, far below $4. And that's just because they never really updated their pricing. And we never excluded them, because obviously if there is kind of low pricing, we're going to use it, but we might not use it any more than we would storage that is following our pricing guidelines. So that does kind of touch on another thing. I suspect there are some people out there who think that if they set their pricing really low, like 50 cents per terabyte a month or something, that their storage will fill up quicker. Well, they're not far off on that, and I think that it's not too far in the future that might kind of become a thing as the marketplace develops a bit more. At this point, price isn't a major consideration, and someone who is kind of undercutting the market isn't going to have their drives fill up significantly faster than someone who isn't. So yeah, we feel that following the behavior that we set out of the auto pricing, if that's well, so that's on all the X miners. When that comes to DIYs, that'll be the way that you earn the most money. I think that covered anything. But is there any follow-on questions or comments, Nate?
No, no, that was good. I appreciate it. We definitely, I mean, I know it's early, right? We would definitely, I agree that with the statement that we don't want to get into this, the whoever has the most storage capacity can lower their price the most, kind of sucks it all in. But no, that makes sense. There's this provided range, and once the full license come on, that'll help with automatic pricing. But just one more follow-up question that's slightly a little bit off topic. I know the other incentives right now they're just kind of use space. But as far as like the ones that are listed in the continuous time in service and location and performance and availability, and again, I know it's early, but any idea on kind of when those extra incentives and kind of the not the ranking, but kind of help with provider selection when those would be coming online? You anticipate that like this year or maybe next year? Or?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can commit to a timeline for all of them. I want to say that I think I've heard before, and we've been quoted as saying that continuous time and service will likely be the first one of those to come in. So I think that that's probably on the kind of medium time frame. So it's not something that'll come tomorrow or next week, but I think there's a good chance by the end of the year, kind of thing. And once again, kind of highlighting what continuous time and service is that there will be favorable terms and payment, and there will be lots of kind of small benefits in favor of providers that have been around for a while and have kind of established themselves as good providers that are reliable long term. And that's important to us because ultimately in our network, churn is something that I don't think we've talked about churn too much lately, but back in the winter, I think we did touch on that. But that's when a provider who has accepted data and has had some data kind of given to them and made commitments around that, that's when a provider just kind of winds up falling off or failing a contract or for whatever reason winds up kind of flaking out. And that's considered churn on the network. And that is the sort of thing that if it happened in mass would result in possible data being at risk. But obviously we have constructed things in such a way that it would require some pretty extenuous circumstances for that to happen. But in general, churn is really inefficient for the network. So if a provider does flake out, we can kind of replace that hole. But that winds up using a lot of bandwidth. And it's just, in general, churn creates inefficiency on our network. So that's something we really want to discourage. But in general, we do feel that it's better not to just have a stick, but you get further with a carrot. So we want to make sure that the people who have been around for a while are properly incentivized to keep being around because they are important for the network operating smoothly and efficiently. So there will be lots of incentive to be, once you set up a provider, there will be lots of incentives to be around for a long time. And if you have a provider that's been around for a long time, there will be a lot of incentive to keep doing that, because if you're doing that, then we like you. And if we like you, you'll be making the most money.
Awesome. Thank you. Henry, you and Ken and Jeff and everybody on the team. Thanks for doing this. I know it must be every single week. It must be onerous to do, but it's a wonderful thing. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, that was an awesome couple questions. I was glad we got to talk about some of those subjects. I think in the future we can, I know that I'm working on some content pieces around incentives and rebates and some of the different marketplace mechanisms that are in place that I think a couple times we've alluded to how they work and why they're in place, but I think it'll be really good and important to, in one kind of cohesive piece, help connect some of the dots as to why these different programs are in place, why we have spent so many resources on setting them up and paying out people for certain things and not other things. Because I think when it's able to be explained in full, I think it makes a lot of sense why we have these rebates and incentives. and some of the lessons that we've learned from other networks that helped create some of those things. So hopefully those will be pieces of content that I'll be able to put out pretty shortly. I am still working with a web developer to revamp a lot of the websites and properties and kind of help make sure that our web experience, when you visit our websites, you'll be able to find everything that you would expect, including these kinds of explanations and content deep dives into our thinking and our processes. So I can't help but notice we have another member up on stage here. What's going on, Ken?
Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the first question that Nate Dogg asked because it hit me that there's going to be some information that we're going to be pushing through quite a bit over the coming period. And I'm not sure that everybody in the provider community is fully yet aware of how this works. So I'm going to say it here in this channel, and I know it's a little controversial, so I've got to be careful what I say next. But again, once you guys are getting sort of a sneak preview, let's just say it like that. The situation about pricing and people not being priced right. Well, we know that with all the licensing, once we get past this full license build, we're going to be pivoting into that basic scripting where we do auto re-announce and auto pricing. So once we get to that place, pretty much the entirety of the network will all be consistently at a price. That kind of precludes sort of a marketplace model. And I'm not sure if that's where we ultimately want to end up or not. We haven't really concluded that, by the way. We're doing it now because we want to keep the network fairly consistent for getting launched and off the ground for customers. But over time, when we get to 20, 30, 40,000 providers, it's quite possible that we will open that up and allow providers to do a little bit more, competing with each other. It won't be a race to the bottom, but it will be an ability to sort of, race within a range. And if you're in a place where, maybe there's not as many providers, you can ultimately charge a little more. And if you're in a place that's congested, perhaps, you find yourself competing a little harder. But what I really want to say today is this idea about the partnering and what we're really doing right now with partners. The whole notion is that we are starting to really grind in on the website, and we'll get out there with a retail offer, some free gigabytes. Come, check us out. But Wasabi tried this, and ultimately they didn't have a lot of success with retail right out of the gate. And I don't expect we will either. I think the success we're going to have out of the gate is going to be by bringing on partners. And we've been really focused on that. And I'm working in the background to do stuff with partners. But one of the things that's come up, or at least I guess what I should say is, because I knew this was always going to be the case, but there's just, as always in this project, everything is coming together and really starting to flesh out in my mind sort of how we want to do this with the partners. And so I want to kind of share that with you because I think it's really interesting in terms of the crypto side of the house, which we don't talk about very much. Because we're going to charge fiat to customers. So if everybody's going to charge $4, right? You guys are all going to be set to $4 right out of the gate. And we know that there's going to be some additional money, which right now actually is fairly significant. It's stuck on 75 SCP per terabyte right now, which is, crazy for incentives. So I don't know what it equals out to with the current pricing, but it's a lot higher than $4. I'll have to put that into the channel after we're done here. But So at some point in the next couple of quarters, as we mentioned, that number will start to float again. But let's just talk a little bit about, let's say, a number like $4 to $6. Right now it's higher, but let's just say $4 to $6 is a number that you're going to really be looking for over the next several years as a passive income earner. Well, here's the thing that we've done right away, straight away, that I think is going to open a bunch of eyes. And I don't think those eyes are yet open. And I think you guys, I think some of you had eyes open like this, and then we turned around and rudely shut them, where you heard something on a YouTube channel and then came here and discovered us and blah blah blah. But here's the real situation. So a partner shows up today and says, I do this, I have clients, they're working on this back end. Currently, I manage and secure some, 15 petabytes of capacity for these guys, right now we're doing it all on Wasabi, or we're doing it all on AWS, or we're doing it all on some other service. And the situation is, we'd like to try out, SCP to see how it ends up, holding up and so forth and such. And so we have a couple of people doing those kinds of trials right now. And I kept saying for the last couple of weeks, I said, well, look, we've got funds to subsidize. We're all about subsidization and helping you out. And, it's sort of the whole idea being, people are sort of thinking, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I might be able to, get help to get a couple of months. But I've been loath to actually just come right out and say what I'm saying, but I'm going to try and come out and say it right now because it's a difficult thing. But at the same time, I think when you realize what we're promising, or what we have built, you're going to recognize that we have the potential to sort of leapfrog here pretty quickly. Over the last 12 to 18 months, well, actually, it's been longer than that, but the last, let's just say the last 6 to 12 months, because that actually captures the last price move in the coin. We've been out aggressively buying SCP, right? Over the last 2 years, we've been buying SCP. I mean, really, ever since the project began, we've been buying SCP. And there's been times where we've been buying a lot of it, right? And then there's been times where we haven't been. There have been circumstances where we bought coins at a certain price back in the old days, and then we did deals with our angel investors to give them, some SCP along with their equity shares and so forth. So, our balance has gone up and down on our company wallet. I expect to make those addresses public here pretty shortly in terms of these buys that we've made and what we have, in this wallet. But right now, I'll just tell you, currently in the wallet, it's like 1.1 million. Now, that's our entire, SCP Corp treasury of coins. Some of those coins are earmarked for other purposes. We use them for the ongoing paying of certain contractors, which, if you're a contractor and you haven't got paid yet, yeah, I know I fucked that up this week, but I got to get that out today. But so that whole 1.1 is not earmarked completely for this thing, but most of it is. Let's just say 1 million of it is right now. And we have plans to continue to buy, obviously, through the rest of the year or whatever. But I'm sitting on these million coins, and if you take those coins and divide them by the coin price as it is today, as low and as derisory as it is, and you divide that then by the $4 to $6 that we're talking about, you come up with a number of 5 to 10 petabytes. In other words, and that's 5 to 10 petabytes spread out over, say, 6 months. So if I just went ahead and spent those million coins on partners and said, look, go out and get me 10 petabytes of capacity, of use, bring it and dump it on the network, and I'll just pay the whole thing. I'll just cover the whole thing. You don't have to get, you can charge the customer whatever the hell you like, and you get to keep it all. We'll just pay for the whole thing. We could onboard 10 petabytes over the next, say, 6 months. If we onboarded 10 petabytes over the next 6 months, I think suddenly a bunch of people would start to take notice about our project. And if a bunch of people started to take notice, they'd start making YouTube videos. And if people started to watch YouTube videos, we'd start to see that thing happening again that we saw in December. We're not going to do exactly that, but we're going to do something kind of close to that, right? In that 1 million coins is earmarked to give to partners to onboard storage. So I've been saying to our partners, I've been saying, look, I'm telling you right now, if you have deals to register, come and see me because I will help you get your data onboarded. I will help you do it in a way where you're able to put a bunch of money in your own pocket. And at the end of the day, your customer is going to be really happy. So far, I'm working with a couple of people on that. We've had a couple of people that got weird on us. One guy who, thought this was just the best thing since sliced bread last year, came and saw us in Vegas, continued to say that, and then afterwards said nobody's going to use this thing and got really wild in the channels and really went stupid on us. So the partnering thing has been sort of weird, right? But I'm working on the website right now to get the partnering section done, the contracts, the NDAs, all that stuff. We're close on it. We have most of it. If you're a partner, you really want to come and see me. Because what's going to end up happening is when the first couple finally realize what it is we're saying, they're going to want to be involved in it. They're going to want to dump some storage onto the network because at the end of the day, it's probably the most free money we're ever going to offer on this project. And if you think about it, we're offering it right now when the price is extremely low. Once we start getting storage on board, right now there's what, 2 petabytes of storage on the network. When we go out and we talk about competitive analysis against other projects in the crypto space, we always have to say we're number 2 in capacity, but we're, we look really weird in terms of how much is used on our network. Well, once we get a couple of partners understanding what's on offer here, and they go out and they start to bang, significant more use storage onto the network, and that use number starts going up and to the right, all of a sudden I think a bunch of people are going to take notice and we'll start to see the wheels move again. We've been consolidating for about 3 or 4 months, but it's time to roll now, as I've been saying over the last couple of weeks. But people haven't really understood what that meant. So I'm saying it very clearly. We have 1 million coins to throw at partners to help them onboard customers. 1 million coins. 1 million. Okay. And we're going to burn through them. We're not, it's not like we're going to like sit on them and give out like 50 here and 50 there. We're going to subsidize bringing partner storage onto the network. So you're going to see those numbers start to go up probably a lot faster than I've been sort of suggesting over the last, whatever period of time. And when that happens, you all know what happens with the project. You all know what happens, right? People start making YouTube videos. People get interested. People start saying stupid shit. People start coming into the Discord. We start getting a whole bunch of new providers. Everything starts to move again. We start selling a bunch of examiners. Everything starts to move because it's all incentivized in the same direction on a grand flywheel, right? The incentives of one thing goes up, it feeds the incentives of the thing next on the flywheel, and it's just a virtuous circle that just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. It's not a Ponzi, it's not an MLM, it's not anything like that. It's us essentially trying to get people to recognize, hey, we've got a real world cloud storage service here. Come and dump some storage on it, try it out. We'll help you out by subsidizing it early and often so that you can learn how it works and see it and prove to yourself that it does exactly what we say it does. And then once you're thrilled beyond belief, then come back and ask us how much it's going to cost to bring your whole entire data set over long term, and let's talk. And because we have 1 million coins right now, we have the ability to really kind of push that for the next 1 to 2 quarters. But that also gives us time over the next 1, 2 quarters to buy more coins. Well, the problem there is simple. We don't have a lot of money. I've been sort of telling our team that now for the last several weeks, and it is kind of scary right now because we are tight on hard currency. We have a ton of SCP and not very many US dollars. We have a ton of SCP and not very much Bitcoin or Ethereum or, whatever currency you believe is the most valuable on earth. It's clearly that new Dodge chain, but whatever it is, we don't have a lot of it. The only thing we have a lot of right now is SCP. Well, SCP buys storage, and that's what we're willing to do right now is get that on here. I'm also in the process of doing investor calls right now, bringing on new investment into the platform. And I've got two very exciting potentialities that we're working through, and I believe that one or both of them are going to pay out, and we will end up over the next probably 6 to 12 weeks being able to close those deals. And at that point in time, I've already made it clear, and I'm making it clear to you guys so you understand how it works. If we onboard 10 million in investment, I've got several pots I have to water. Well, first of all, I have to pay the developers, right? I have to build a budget for our development team. I have to increase development big time. I need 3, 4, 5 back-end engineers. I need 2 or 3 more front enders. I need a web dev full time. I need a whole bunch of things. I need IT. So there's going to be some development buttressing going on. That's a pot we have to water. Marketing budget. We've got to get our brand name out there. We've got to get our name out to where people say, oh, I've heard of those guys. Right now, if you heard of Wasabi or you've heard of whoever, but you haven't really heard of many players in this crypto space. Storage is the one that's been doing significant marketing in the real world. So we need to do that. So that's another pot we have to water. We also have to put money into buying SCP coins. Why? Because we're probably going to keep doing this subsidization thing, right? So there's the message right there. Because you see what I'm saying? I'm saying we're going to pay you $4 to $6. But on the other side, I'm also saying, but look, we're probably going to go ahead, even though the headline price per terabyte is $10, we're probably going to make it a lot more palatable for partners to be able to go out and onboard storage. Because for the first 18 months or something like that, we're really going to need to bring people on board, and they're not going to, if they get gated by the price, then we've kind of lost. The whole point of Henry sort of telling the Discord story at the beginning is, even though we know Discord might end up being something other than what we would prefer it to be, it's too fucking good not to use it. Right? It works awesome. It's free. We're having these big, 80, 100, 150 people show up in an audio call. The quality is good on the call. We record them every week without problem. The tool is just good. And so what does that allow them to do? They've grown like crazy. They've just grown like crazy. And that's what we have to do. And how do we do it? By subsidizing the storage as it comes aboard. So that's the missing link that you haven't heard from us up until now, that we plan to fully subsidize storage as it comes aboard. Even though our headline price might be $10, most people, when they come aboard through a partner, are not going to be paying $10. They're going to be coming at some sweetheart rate, and we hope to be able to onboard. Now, what will end up happening is they have a great experience if it's good, if they see that the thing actually works, if they can choose the providers that they want to use and they're within their region and they get good latencies and the uploads are fast and we can really show through our testing what the performance looks like, then they're going to stick around and this thing's going to grow like crazy and our network's going to just expand rapidly over the next 18 months. So we're going to start to see a lot of really powerful positive things happen. If the network doesn't work, if we have a lot of technical problems, if we have a lot of programming issues, if we have a lot of provider issues, if we have a lot of software issues, then of course it's going to take longer because we'll have to grind through them. So what my chief challenge is over the next 2 quarters at least is to make sure that all of those pots get watered to the level that each needs, so that we bring on the right number of engineers to keep the thing really, really, really iterating and moving forward, that we're working on the marketing in the right kind of way, and that we're ultimately subsidizing partners in a way that we start to see storage being onboarded crazy. So that's the message. As always, I rambled on a long time about it, but I think you want to go back and re-listen to what I just said, because if you don't understand it, what I just announced is really the ultimate game plan of what we set out to do from the beginning. We could have done something like this way back when. We could have set like collateral at 50x. We could have forced you guys to buy the coin, right? We could have done a bunch of things with collateral yield. We could have put a yield on collateral and forced you guys to lock up a whole bunch of coins, right? We could have done a lot of different things that were shady and Ponzi like and nonsense like in order to raise the coin price. But we didn't do it because, in our view, the way to do it is the right way. Build the product, make sure it works correctly, make sure it solves the problem we say it's going to solve, make sure it does it performantly in a way that's competitive with the providers that are currently out there on the planet, right? And then get out there and give it away in a way that ultimately allows everybody to make a lot of money. You guys are going to make a lot of money. The partners are going to make a lot of money. The customers are going to perceive a great price for the storage that they're onboarding versus what they're currently paying for on Amazon, Wasabi, and whoever else they're putting stuff out there. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this little network that could shows up on the radar and starts to grow into something a lot bigger. That's the plan. That's been the plan, and that's what we're at right now, where we're currently in that place where it all begins to start to turn now. So tell your friends, go back and re-listen, come back next week. I'll turn it back over to Henry because I talked too long anyway. Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know how to top that other than just encourage going back and listening to that again. I know I will, because that was awesome. And totally a plan that has been kind of coming together for a long time. It has a lot of pieces and a lot of fronts, but I think this thing is primed to explode. No pun intended. And I'm really excited, and I think everyone else, once they kind of get what's happening here, I think they will be too. So, thanks for coming, everyone. Look forward to the recording on YouTube later. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night, everyone.